short compared to the average in America. If you've got 8 years, 7 years, even longer, then you're doing much better than the majority of what the people in America when it comes to this particular pillar. Now, why did this pillar even come up? Like, what made them think this is something that we need to even consider when it comes to people's credit and their credit score? So, like in my mind's imagination, when I think about the naming of this and how it even came about, in my mind's imagination, this is how I think. So when Bill Fair and Earl Isaac, these two are the creators of FICO. That's why it's FICO, Fair Isaac Corporation. Bill Fair and Earl Isaac. They were probably sitting around. They were cooking up this recipe that we still use today, because this was back in the 1950s. We still use today to determine your credit worthiness. I think that Earl said to Bill that Earl said to Bill that the average time customers have had credit should be included in our formula. We should reward the people that have had credit for a long time. Bill's response was, man, that's a good idea. That is a good idea. This will also inspire people to establish credit earlier, too. Now, what do we call it? Earl says average length of history. Bill ponders for a minute. He laughs and he said, that's a mouthful. How about just length of history? That's how it came about, far as I'm concerned, because it's always been the average length of history, not just the time when you started to have credit and then basically however old you are, you just add those years up. That's how I think Bill Fair or Isaac came up with length of history. So that's what we got is 15% of your credit score. Now, what are we going to do about it? What does all this mean? What does all this mean for you? So here's what you need to know about this average length of history. I said all that about Bill Fair and Earl Isaac because it should be the average length of history, but FICO calculates this for you. So again, they're going to go ahead and do that for you, and you'll be able to see it. The longer your length of history, the better, right? So if you've got 8, 10, 12 years, the longer it is, the better. Now, every time you apply, you are approved, and you open a new account, it shortens your length of history. You understand that? Every time you add a new account to your credit report, it's going to shorten your length of history. This is another reason why you should only apply for credit when you absolutely need it. I believe I said this when we talked about the when we talked about the inquiries or credit pools. That's why you only want to apply for credit when you absolutely need it. You're going to get dinged on that end. That's one of the 5 pillars, right? And potentially you get dinged if you're approved and it actually goes on your credit report for this particular pillar. So you're hurting yourself when you do that, especially if you don't absolutely need it, right? So keep that in mind. So every time you open an account, your score could decrease what? 2 to 20 points depending, right? So we talked about it in inquiries. You can get dinged 2 to 20 points depending on where it is just for the credit pool in itself, just for applying. And then if you add on top of that your length of history being decreased, your credit score is going to be decreased as well, right? So when they recalculate your length of history and it is shorter than it was before, it's absolutely going to decrease your credit score. You can count on it being 2 to 20 points. You can count on 2 to 20 points just for the inquiry in itself. Now, typically, I told you guys, I usually shoot 2 to 10 points when it comes to your inquiry, because that comes off your credit report, whether you're approved or not. Then when you add on the fact that you do actually get an account and it's a new account, you're going to lose some additional points there. So again, just make sure you absolutely need what you need, want what you want, so you don't impact your credit score negatively too much. So this is also why you should not eliminate old accounts. So talk about it all the time. So it doesn't matter if they're a closed account or an open account. Doesn't matter if they are a revolving account or an installment account. Getting rid of older accounts will decrease your credit scores because you're messing with your length of history. You're really bothering your length of history. So how many points does that translate to? Whether it's how many points does that translate to? Whether it's about opening a new account or closing the old ones? Frankly, I don't know how many points it could cost you. I have no idea how many points it could cost you. But I do know is you don't want to get rid of those old accounts. So oftentimes people will call me up and they'll say, "Hey, I want to wipe it clean. I want to get rid of some of these old accounts," or they're just tired of looking at this old card that they had on there, and it's 8 years old. It's been closed for 8 years, and it's still on their credit report. Well, it's on your credit report, and it's helping you. But if you want to get rid of it and you just get rid of it for the sake of getting rid of it, you want your credit report to look pretty and clean, you're going to be hurting your credit score. So you don't want to get rid of your old accounts. It's also why you're told, one of the reasons that you're told not to or advised not to get rid of credit cards. So you got an old credit card, you never use it. Maybe it was from a place that you never use or hardly, or you don't live in the area anymore where that particular store is located. Doesn't hurt your score to just have that card. It helps your score to have that card. An old card, right? So it's an old card. You need to keep it on your credit report because it's helpful for you in other categories, right? It's helpful for you for those things. So you want to keep those cards. So that's why you don't want to close any of those old cards. You just don't want to do that because it is helpful for you. So you don't want to close any of those old accounts either. Old good accounts especially. Good accounts especially. Now, if you've had an account and it was really, really, really bad, like you've got 8, 10, 12 late payments on this particular account, maybe that's something worth you trying to get off your credit report, because maybe those 8 late payments are hurting you more so than that length of history, because payment history is 35% of it. But there is not a calculation, but there is a what do you call it? So it's not a calculation about a formula, if you will, about which one's helping or hurting more. But you've got to be very careful about trying to do those things, trying to manipulate your score in that manner. Oftentimes people are trying to do that to manipulate their score, and they're just not manipulating it in the best light for them. They're doing some manipulation. It's just not always working out for them. So be careful about those things, all right? Now, what about your average length of history? What if you got a short one, right? It's 2 years, it's 3 years, whatever it is. Is there anything you can do to make your average length of history longer? Yes. Yes, there are some things that you can do for that. A couple of ways. Well, a couple of ways. Not a whole bunch of ways, but a couple of ways that you can impact this. So one is, and I don't want to get into this one, but I got to mention it because I just want to be transparent with you guys. One of it, in my opinion, that are really not good for the vast majority of people. I'm talking 99.99999% of people. This is not necessarily good for you to do so. And that's to add a trade line to your credit report. Now, if you're not sure exactly what I mean about a trade line, because every one of these accounts is a trade line, right? But adding trade lines, technically accounts that are not necessarily yours, but they're placed on your credit report so it can appear that you've had an account for a long time, and of course ideally that you've paid it on time each and every time for the last 15, 20 years or whatever it is, right? That's going to help you with your credit score. These are trade lines. Like I said, not my cup of tea. It is for rare occasions that I would even advise people to add a trade line. If you got a question about this, before you go finding a trade line to add to your credit report, contact me. 800@creditscoreman.com. You disagree with me about these trade lines, whether you're a credit guru or whether you're just a Joe Blow, your name's Mary Smith, whatever it is, contact me and we can have that debate. It's not an argument. We can have a debate in philosophies or what have you about trade lines. Yes, absolutely. Somebody's going to contact me and say, hey, I added a trade line. My credit score went up all the way, 776. It went up. Great, worked out perfectly. Didn't say they didn't work. Didn't say they didn't work. I'm talking about, are they worth it in terms of cash out of your pocket? Are they worth it if you're not going to do anything with your credit score, your new great credit score? And then what do you do when it falls off? Those are three major things that we need to talk about when it comes to trade lines. So contact me. You got an issue with that? Contact me. 800 at creditscoreman.com, and let's talk about trade lines. Now, what else can you do? You can become an authorized user. Absolutely, you can become an authorized user as long as that particular card, history, average, that card's opening date is further than what your particular length of history is. So if you've got a 3-year length of history, and there's a card that you can jump on as an authorized user that was opened 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, 12 years ago, that's absolutely going to help you with your average length of history. You want to become an authorized user on a card like that, right? So when you do that, that's going to improve your score dramatically. It will improve your score. Now, when it comes to these authorized users, you guys should know by now, it's one of my favorite things, one of my absolute favorite things to help you boost your credit score. In 2021, if you want a better credit score, and let's say you have a credit utilization issue, you have a length of history issue, you have a payment history issue, you want to become an authorized user on somebody's credit card. Now, that can be your boo, it can be your mother, your father, your sister, your brother. It could be anybody that you're close to, right? You want to become an authorized user. Your job in 2021, and as soon as possible, is to find someone to make you an authorized user. Now, they might be doing you a favor, but you got to look out for yourself too when it comes to that. They might be doing you a favor. What you need from this particular account and this authorized user, it needs to be older, since we're talking about length of history. The card needs to have been open longer than whatever your credit age is. It needs to have a longer history. Again, if you've got a 5-year history, it needs to be 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. The older, the better, right? It needs to be that. Secondly, it needs a perfect payment history. There's no need to add in a credit card or add any account to your credit that does not have a perfect payment history. After all, payment history is what? 35% of what makes up your credit score. It needs to have that. Thirdly, you don't get an inquiry for being added as an authorized user. You don't get an inquiry at all. That's wonderful, right? If you don't have a credit card at all, or even if you have 4 credit cards, and you got 4, which are revolving debt, and you got 4 installment loans, credit bureaus always swear up and down that it's not enough when it comes to your credit mix. It's just not enough. It would be great if you had something else. Cool, then. It helps you with your credit mix. And then finally, your utilization. If it has a great limit and a very low balance, perfect, right? You want to keep it under 30% ideally. But even if it's higher than 30%, even if it is higher than 30%, long as it's not maxed out or close to maxed out. If it's 80 to 100 percent when it comes to your credit utilization, maybe you want to think about it, right? If it's the person that's using it, this particular card on a monthly basis to pay all their bills and then they pay it off at the end of the month, probably not the absolute best card for you. Probably not. But it's worth getting it because of all of the attributes that come with it. Becoming an authorized user can and will impact 90% of your credit score. Positively impact 90% of your credit score. So, 2021, you want to become an authorized user if it's going to be feasible for you. Questions? Contact me, 800 at creditscoreman.com, right? So, we're dealing with these 5 pillars of credit, right? Now, we have absolutely covered 70% of what makes up your credit score. When we come to your length of history, it's 15% of what makes up your credit score. We covered the payment history, 35% of what makes up your credit score. You add those two together, and that's 50% of your score. Tack on our credit mix and inquiries, 70% of your credit score we have tackled in this particular series. come back next week.